adapted from 1001 Nights. Sindbad's first voyage, the island that wasn't. In the ancient city of Baghdad, where the golden light of dawn would spread gently across the bustling markets and quiet homes, lived a young man named Sindbad. His life, by many accounts, was blessed. Born into a wealthy family, Sindbad knew no hardship in his youth. His family's home was large and beautifully adorned with treasures from all over the world: silks, spices, rare artifacts, and precious stones. Yet, despite this wealth, there was a restlessness in Sindbad's heart. As a child, Sindbad had often listened to the tales of sailors and merchants who came from distant lands, speaking of strange creatures, hidden treasures, and mysterious islands beyond the horizon. The stories filled Sindbad's mind with wonder, painting vivid pictures of places he had never seen but longed to discover. Even as he grew older and began to take on the responsibilities of his family's business, that deep yearning for adventure never left him. Though he lived in comfort, Sindbad knew that something was missing. His heart was not content with managing the family's affairs or trading in the markets of Baghdad. The sea, with its vast, uncharted expanse, called to him. It was a pull he could not resist, a promise of the unknown, of places that held the mysteries of the world, waiting to be explored. One day, as Sindbad stood at the edge of the city, gazing out toward the horizon where the Tigris River met the distant sea, he made a decision. He would no longer deny the call of adventure that had lived in his heart for so long. He would set sail, not just to expand his wealth, but to discover the world beyond the shores of Baghdad. He believed that life was meant to be lived fully, and for him, that meant leaving the comforts of home and venturing into the great unknown. With his decision made, Sindbad began to prepare for his first voyage. He gathered the finest goods to trade: exotic spices, rare fabrics, and valuable gems, and hired a crew of seasoned sailors to accompany him. His ship was sturdy, built to withstand the challenges of the open sea, and as he stood on the deck, watching the preparations unfold, he felt a calm resolve settle over him. This was the beginning of something greater than wealth or success. This was the start of a journey that would change him forever. As the day of departure arrived, Sindbad's family gathered at the docks to bid him farewell. His parents, though proud, were also anxious. The sea, after all, was unpredictable, and the dangers that lay beyond the horizon were many. But Sindbad reassured them with a quiet smile, knowing in his heart that this was the path he was meant to follow. The sun rose higher in the sky, casting a warm glow over the city as the ship's sails unfurled, catching the soft breeze that would carry them out to sea. Sindbad stood at the bow, watching as the shores of Baghdad faded into the distance. The rhythmic sound of the waves lapping against the hull and the gentle rocking of the ship filled him with a deep sense of peace. The adventure had begun. Days passed in quiet harmony. The crew worked diligently, their movements synchronized as they hoisted sails, steered the ship, and ensured the journey went smoothly. Sindbad, ever curious, spent his days learning from the sailors, listening to their tales of past voyages, studying the stars that guided them at night, and absorbing the knowledge that would help him navigate his own path as an adventurer. The sea was kind to them, offering clear skies and calm waters. Each day, Sindbad marveled at the vastness of the ocean, feeling both humbled and inspired by its beauty. It seemed to stretch on forever, an endless expanse of blue, glittering under the sun by day and reflecting the stars by night. The sea, in all its majesty, reminded him of the vastness of life itself, full of mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And so, Sindbad's heart, once restless, began to find a new rhythm, one that matched the steady ebb and flow of the waves. The sea was not just a passage to faraway lands. It was a teacher, offering lessons in patience, humility, and wonder. But as with all journeys, the sea held its own surprises, and Sindbad was soon to discover that not everything was as it seemed. One quiet morning, after days of peaceful sailing, Sindbad's crew spotted something unusual on the distant horizon, a dark shape slowly coming into view. At first, it appeared as nothing more than a faint outline against the endless stretch of ocean. But as they drew nearer, the shape began to take form. An island, rich with greenery, seemed to rise from the water, its lush foliage gleaming under the midday sun. The sight of land stirred excitement among the crew, who had grown accustomed to the unchanging rhythm of the sea. Sindbad's heart quickened as he gazed at the island, his curiosity piqued. There was something almost mystical about it, with its dense forests and wide, sandy shores. The island seemed untouched by human hands, as though it had been waiting for centuries, hidden away from the world, awaiting the arrival of travelers like them. The soft murmur of waves lapping at the shore was the only sound that accompanied their approach, and the air was filled with the scent of salt water and the promise of adventure. "Land ahead!" one of the sailors called out, his voice carrying across the deck. The crew, weary from the long days at sea, eagerly prepared to anchor near the island. Their spirits lifted by the sight of firm ground, they moved swiftly to lower the sails and guide the ship toward the tranquil bay that stretched before them. The stillness of the water, its surface like glass, reflected the sky so perfectly that it was difficult to tell where the sea ended and the heavens began. Sindbad gave the order to anchor the ship just off the shore, and soon he and his crew waded through the shallow waters onto the sandy beach. The warm sand beneath their feet felt like a welcoming embrace after so many days at sea. The island was peaceful, its beauty almost otherworldly. Towering trees lined the beach, their leaves rustling softly in the gentle breeze, and colorful birds flitted from branch to branch, filling the air with their cheerful songs. Sindbad walked along the shore, his eyes taking in the vibrant colors of the island's flora, the deep greens of the trees, the bright blossoms that dotted the landscape in shades of red, yellow, and violet. The air was fragrant with the scent of wildflowers, mingling with the salty tang of the sea. Everything about the island spoke of tranquility, as though it were a paradise untouched by time. As his crew began to explore, some ventured into the shade of the trees to rest, while others prepared a meal on the beach. Sindbad, ever the adventurer, felt a deep sense of contentment as he wandered further inland. He marveled at the beauty of the place, how it seemed to exist in perfect harmony with the world around it. Here, in this peaceful oasis, Sindbad felt the burdens of the world slip away, replaced by a calm that came from being so close to nature's quiet majesty. The afternoon passed in peaceful bliss. The sailors relaxed, some napping under the cool shade of the trees, while others splashed in the shallow waters, laughing and enjoying the calm after so many days of hard work. Sindbad, too, allowed himself a moment of rest, lying back on the soft grass near the edge of the forest, watching the way the sunlight filtered through the leaves above, casting a gentle, golden glow across the land. He closed his eyes and listened to the sound of the waves lapping softly at the shore, the birds calling to one another in the distance. But as the day began to draw to a close and the sun dipped lower in the sky, something subtle began to change. The peacefulness of the island, once so welcoming, now felt slightly off. The air seemed thicker, heavier, and a faint tremor, barely noticeable at first, began to shake the ground beneath their feet. Sindbad sat up, his brow furrowing as he glanced around. The trees, which had swayed gently in the breeze all day, now seemed to tremble with the earth itself. "What was that?" one of the sailors asked, his voice tinged with unease. Before Sindbad could respond, the tremor grew stronger, causing the sand beneath them to shift. The peaceful sounds of the island were replaced by an unsettling silence. The birds, which had filled the air with their songs just moments ago, had fallen quiet, as if they too sensed the change. Sindbad's instincts, honed through years of travel, told him that something was terribly wrong. He stood, his heart racing, as the ground beneath him heaved once more, this time with enough force to send ripples through the water and cause the trees to sway violently. It was then that he realized the truth. The island was moving. "What's happening?" one of the crew shouted, panic rising in his voice. Sindbad's mind raced as he pieced together the events of the day. The calm waters, the island's isolated beauty, and now the movement beneath them. This was no ordinary island. With a shock of realization, Sindbad understood that they had not anchored near an island at all. The land they had walked upon, the ground they had thought so solid and safe, was in fact the back of an enormous whale, its body having remained still beneath the surface of the water, undisturbed until now. "Back to the ship," Sindbad shouted, his voice cutting through the rising fear. "We must leave at once." The crew, wide-eyed with terror, scrambled to their feet and began running toward the shore. The ground beneath them lurched violently as the great whale, disturbed by the fire they had built, began to stir. The creature's massive body shifted, sending waves crashing against the beach and causing the earth to tilt dangerously beneath their feet. Panic surged through Sindbad's crew as the ground continued to lurch beneath their feet. What they had believed to be solid earth was shifting, trembling with a life of its own. The realization that they had been camping on the back of a massive creature, a great whale, brought a new kind of terror, unlike anything they had experienced before. The once calm and serene island was now tilting dangerously, its vast body beginning to move beneath the waters of the sea. The trees swayed violently, their roots struggling to hold against the force of the whale's awakening. Waves churned around them, crashing against the shore with increasing intensity as the whale stirred. Sindbad, ever the leader, took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm despite the chaos unfolding around him. He knew that panicking would only make the situation worse. He could see the fear in the eyes of his men, their hearts pounding as they ran toward the ship, the soft sand beneath their feet now treacherous and unsteady. But Sindbad's voice cut through the noise of the waves and the rising shouts of his crew. "Stay calm," he called out, his voice clear and steady. "Get to the ship. Move quickly, but carefully." His words carried an authority that the sailors clung to like a lifeline. They followed his lead, racing back toward the shallow waters where their ship was anchored. The ground continued to tremble beneath them, but Sindbad's calm guidance steadied their resolve. One by one, they reached the edge of the water, wading through the waves that splashed wildly against their legs. As they reached the ship, the crew climbed aboard in haste, their hearts still racing. The ship rocked gently on the water, as though it too could feel the deep movement of the whale below. Sindbad was the last to board, casting one final glance at the island. No, at the great creature that had deceived them with its stillness and size. The whale's massive body, now fully awake, began to rise from the water. Its back, once covered with sand and trees, emerged from the waves in a slow, graceful motion. Sindbad watched in awe as the whale's smooth, dark skin glistened in the sunlight, water cascading off its immense form. The sheer size of the creature was beyond anything Sindbad had ever imagined. This was no ordinary sea creature. This was a living, breathing force of nature, ancient and magnificent. The whale's movements were not violent or aggressive, despite the disruption caused by the campfire. There was a quiet majesty in the way it moved, as though it was merely shifting in its sleep, unbothered by the chaos it had inadvertently caused. Its slow, deliberate rise from the depths of the ocean was a reminder to Sindbad of how small and insignificant they were in comparison to the vastness of the natural world. As the whale's tail broke through the surface of the water, sending great sprays of seawater into the air, Sindbad ordered his men to ready the sails. They needed to move the ship away from the creature's path, to let it return to the deep without causing further disturbance. "Raise the anchor," Sindbad commanded, his voice steady and sure. "We must sail away from here." The crew, still breathless from their escape, followed his orders swiftly. The anchor was pulled up, and the sails unfurled, catching the wind that had begun to pick up around them. The ship moved slowly at first, but soon it was gliding smoothly away from the whale's great shadow. Sindbad stood at the helm, his hands firm on the wheel as he guided the ship away from the creature. He couldn't help but feel a deep sense of respect for the whale, a respect born not out of fear, but out of awe. This enormous creature, this living island, had allowed them to walk upon its back, to experience a brief moment of wonder before reminding them of the power of the natural world. As the ship sailed farther from the whale, the creature began to descend once more into the ocean's depths. Sindbad watched as the whale's massive form disappeared beneath the waves, leaving only a gentle ripple in its wake. The sea, which had been turbulent moments before, returned to its usual calm. The surface of the water smoothed out, reflecting the sky once again, as if nothing unusual had ever happened. The island that wasn't had vanished, leaving only the open sea behind. Sindbad's crew stood on the deck, catching their breath and exchanging quiet glances. Their fear had subsided, replaced by a sense of disbelief at what they had just witnessed. They had escaped unharmed, but they were forever changed by the experience. The encounter with the whale, though terrifying, had also been humbling. It was a reminder that the world they sailed through was full of mysteries, some beautiful, some dangerous, but all worthy of respect. Sindbad remained at the helm, his eyes still fixed on the spot where the whale had disappeared. He felt a quiet reverence settle over him, a feeling of gratitude for the creature that had shown them the fragility of human life in the face of nature's grandeur. The sea, in all its vastness, had once again taught him an important lesson. Not everything in the world could be controlled or understood. Some things simply were, existing in their own right, indifferent to the smallness of human ambitions. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting a soft, golden light over the ocean, Sindbad felt a deep sense of peace. The adventure had not been what he expected, but it had given him a new understanding of the world and his place within it. He was but a traveler, a small part of a much larger, more intricate universe, and in that realization, he found a quiet contentment. The crew, now more relaxed, returned to their duties, their hearts lighter than before. The ship sailed on, leaving the memory of the great whale behind, but the lesson it had imparted stayed with Sindbad. He had faced the unknown, not with force or aggression, but with humility and respect. And for that, the sea had allowed him to pass through its mysteries unharmed. As the ship sailed away from the place where the great whale had disappeared, the sea returned to its peaceful rhythm. The waves, once stirred by the creature's massive presence, gently lapped against the sides of the vessel, and the wind filled the sails with a soft, steady breeze. The sun, now lower in the sky, bathed the ocean in warm hues of gold and orange, casting long shadows across the deck as the day slowly turned to dusk. Sindbad stood at the helm, his hands resting lightly on the ship's wheel, his gaze fixed on the endless horizon. The excitement and fear that had gripped him and his crew moments before had faded, leaving in its place a deep sense of calm. The sea had always been a place of mystery and wonder, but now, after their encounter with the whale, it felt even more alive, full of secrets that Sindbad knew he would never fully understand. As the sun sank lower, the crew began to settle into the familiar tasks of the evening. Some men tended to the sails, while others prepared the evening meal. The air was filled with the quiet sounds of work and conversation, and the tension that had hung over them since their escape slowly dissipated. The island that wasn't had been a reminder of how unpredictable the sea could be, but it had also brought them closer as a crew. They had faced something extraordinary together and emerged safely, guided by Sindbad's calm leadership. Sindbad took a deep breath, letting the cool sea air fill his lungs. He felt a sense of gratitude for the whale, for the lessons it had imparted, lessons about the power of nature, the importance of humility, and the need to remain open to the unknown. He had always believed that the sea was full of wonders, but now, after after seeing the island transform into a living, breathing creature, he understood just how small and fragile they were in the face of such immense forces. As night began to fall, Sindbad gathered his crew together on the deck, wanting to reflect on their experience and share his thoughts. The men, still shaken but relieved to be safe, sat in a circle, their faces lit by the soft glow of the ship's lanterns. The stars began to emerge in the darkening sky, their light reflecting on the surface of the water like tiny jewels scattered across the sea. "We have all learned something today," Sindbad began, his voice calm and thoughtful. "The world is far larger and more mysterious than we can ever know. We set out seeking wealth, adventure, and new lands, but the sea has reminded us that not everything is as it seems." The crew nodded in agreement, their expressions solemn as they listened to their captain's words. They had seen the island with their own eyes, walked upon its shores, and believed it to be a place of rest and refuge. Yet, it had been something far more profound. An enormous whale, a creature so vast and ancient that it could be mistaken for land. "This experience," Sindbad continued, "has taught me that we must approach the unknown with respect and humility. The sea is not ours to conquer or control. It is a force beyond our understanding, filled with wonders and dangers alike. We must learn to live in harmony with it, not try to bend it to our will." He paused for a moment, gazing out at the horizon where the last traces of sunlight lingered. "We were fortunate today. The whale, though it could have easily destroyed us, did not. It allowed us to leave unharmed, and for that, we should be grateful. But let this be a reminder to us all. No matter how much we may wish to explore and discover, we must always be prepared for the unexpected." The men nodded, their faces reflecting the quiet reverence Sindbad felt for the sea and its mysteries. They had come to realize, as he had, that their journey was not just about reaching new destinations or finding treasure. It was about learning, growing, and discovering their place in the world. The sea, vast and untamable, was their teacher, and they were merely students, eager to learn its lessons. As the stars filled the sky, one of the sailors spoke up, his voice quiet but thoughtful. "Captain, do you think there are more creatures like the whale out there? Other beings so large and ancient that they appear as islands?" Sindbad smiled, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. "Perhaps," he said. "The sea holds many secrets, some of which we may never discover. But that is part of the beauty of the ocean. It reminds us that the world is full of wonders, both seen and unseen. We must be willing to explore, but also to accept that there are things we may never fully understand." The men fell silent, reflecting on Sindbad's words. The gentle rocking of the ship and the soft sound of the waves against the hull filled the air, creating a peaceful atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the panic they had felt earlier. Now, they were calmer, more centered, their hearts filled with a quiet awe for the world around them. As the evening deepened, Sindbad felt a sense of contentment settle over him. This voyage, though filled with unexpected challenges, had already taught him so much. He had learned to trust in the sea's wisdom, to accept the unknown with grace, and to lead his crew with calm and steady resolve. He knew there would be more adventures ahead, more mysteries to unravel and dangers to face. But for now, he was at peace. The ship continued its steady journey across the vast ocean, the sails billowing gently in the night breeze. The stars above shone brightly, their light guiding the way forward, just as they had for sailors throughout the ages. Sindbad stood at the helm, his heart filled with gratitude for the sea and all that it had shown him. "Rest well, my friends," he said to his crew, who began to drift off to their quarters. "Tomorrow is another day, and the sea will have more to teach us." As the men retired for the night, Sindbad remained on deck for a while longer, gazing out at the endless horizon. The moon had risen now, casting a silvery glow over the water, and the ship sailed on, cutting through the calm sea like a silent whisper in the night. Sindbad smiled to himself, feeling the gentle pull of the waves beneath him, guiding him forward on his journey of discovery and reflection. In that moment, he knew that this was where he was meant to be, on the open sea, exploring the world's mysteries with an open heart and a mind full of wonder. The whale, with its great size and ancient wisdom, had been a reminder that the world was full of surprises, and that true adventure was not about finding treasure, but about learning, growing, and embracing the unknown. And so, Sindbad sailed on, content in the knowledge that the sea would always be there, waiting to reveal its secrets, one voyage at a time. After weeks at sea, the familiar sight of Baghdad's port finally came into view. The golden domes of the city shimmered in the late afternoon sun, and the narrow, bustling streets stretched out before the ship as it glided smoothly toward the harbor. The air, fragrant with the scent of spices and incense, was alive with the hum of life, a stark contrast to the quiet vastness of the ocean that Sindbad and his crew had grown accustomed to. As the ship drew closer to the docks, Sindbad's heart stirred with a sense of both relief and longing. While the sea had become a second home to him, full of adventure and mystery, there was something comforting about returning to the familiar embrace of the city he loved. He had left Baghdad as a restless soul, eager for adventure, but now he returned changed, a man who had faced the unknown and learned the deeper meaning of exploration. The crew, too, seemed eager to return to solid ground. They moved about the ship with renewed energy, their faces bright with anticipation. Though their journey had been long and full of challenges, they had grown closer as a crew, united by the shared experience of the voyage and the lessons learned along the way. Sindbad watched them fondly, knowing that each man had gained something from their time at sea, whether it was courage, humility, or a newfound respect for the unpredictable nature of the world. As the ship was moored to the dock, Sindbad descended the gangplank, greeted by the familiar sights and sounds of the bustling port. Merchants called out from their stalls. Sailors loaded and unloaded cargo, and the warm breeze carried with it the voices of the city's many inhabitants. Sindbad felt a sense of calm wash over him. The world of adventure and danger seemed far away now, replaced by the comforting rhythm of daily life. His family and friends were waiting for him at the docks, their faces filled with joy at his return. His parents, though visibly older since his departure, embraced him warmly, their eyes filled with pride. They had worried for him, of course, but now that he stood before them, safe and sound. They knew that the sea had given him something greater than they could have ever imagined. Wisdom, experience, and a sense of fulfillment that no wealth could provide. "Welcome home, my son," his father said, his voice thick with emotion. "You have returned a man, wiser than when you left." Sindbad smiled, embracing his father. "I have learned much, father. The sea is a great teacher, full of mysteries and lessons for those who are willing to listen." Later that evening, Sindbad's home was filled with laughter and stories as friends and family gathered to celebrate his return. His house, though grand and filled with the trappings of wealth, felt small compared to the vastness of the world he had seen on his voyage. But there was comfort in its familiarity, in the warmth of the hearth and the faces of those he loved. As the guests ate and talked, they begged Sindbad to tell the tale of his journey. They wanted to hear about the strange lands he had visited, the treasures he had seen, and the dangers he had faced. Sindbad, always a thoughtful storyteller, waited until the room grew quiet before he began. "There is much to tell," he said, his voice calm and reflective. "But the most important lesson I learned on this journey is not about treasure or adventure. It is about the beauty and mystery of the world we live in, and the respect we must have for it." He spoke softly, recounting the tale of the island that wasn't, how he and his crew had believed they had found paradise, only to discover that they had been resting on the back of a giant whale. He described the awe they had felt at the creature's size and majesty, and how it had reminded them of their smallness in the grand scheme of things. "The whale could have destroyed us," Sindbad said, "but it did not. It allowed us to leave unharmed, and for that, I am grateful. But the lesson it taught me is one I will carry with me forever. Nature is vast and powerful, and we must approach it with humility. We are not its masters, but its guests." His words hung in the air, the quiet of the room reflecting the deep respect his listeners had for his tale. Sindbad had always been a man of action, driven by curiosity and a desire for adventure. But now, as he spoke, it was clear that the sea had given him something more profound, a sense of reverence for the world, and an understanding that true wisdom comes not from conquering the unknown, but from learning to live in harmony with it. As the evening wore on and the guests began to leave, Sindbad found himself alone with his thoughts. He sat by the window, looking out over the city as the lights flickered in the darkness. The familiar sounds of Baghdad filled the air, the distant call of vendors in the night market, the soft murmur of voices, the occasional laugh from the street below. Yet, even here, in the heart of the city, Sindbad could still feel the gentle pull of the sea, calling to him like an old friend. He had returned home, but his heart was already thinking of the next voyage. The world was full of wonders, some seen, some hidden, and Sindbad knew that his journey was far from over. The sea had much more to teach him, and he was eager to listen. But for now, he allowed himself to rest. The warmth of his home, the love of his family, and the quiet of the night brought him peace. He knew that when the time was right, he would set sail again, not for wealth or glory, but for the wisdom that only the sea could offer. In the days that followed, Sindbad found himself reflecting on all he had learned. He walked through the streets of Baghdad, visiting old friends and listening to the tales of other travelers. Each story reminded him of the vastness of the world, the many paths one could take, and the lessons that awaited those who sought them. The sea, he realized, was not just a place of adventure. It was a reflection of life itself. It was unpredictable, beautiful, dangerous, and full of mysteries that could never be fully understood. And like life, it required patience, humility, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. Sindbad knew that he would return to the sea soon, but for now, he was content to be at home, surrounded by the people he loved. The island that wasn't, the great whale that had carried him across its back, remained in his heart, a symbol of the world's endless wonders. And as he stood at the edge of the city, looking out toward the horizon where the Tigris met the sea, Sindbad smiled. The world was vast, and his journey had only just begun. As you close your eyes, let the echoes of this story guide you to peace. Drift gently into sleep, knowing you are part of a world where love and wisdom shine bright. May your dreams be calm, comforting, and filled with wonder.
relaxation.